Good afternoon. My name is Sharita Heath, and I will be presenting on this is session 3 of the Smart Planning for Workforce Reshaping series presented by YRCI University. Today's topic is RIF Ready Retirement Planning. All right, so a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat and we will get to them at the end of the webinar. Also, we will package this series and send it out next week. All right. All right. So once again, my name is Sharita Heath, and I have over 10 years of experience in program management and HR or human resources, but I've specialized more so in federal staffing and recruiting. So I was a GS 201 for the federal government, and I've done similar work on the private sector side. You can see on in my mini bio some of the agencies that I've supported both as a federal employee and a contractor. And then I have my bachelor's and master's degrees from Georgia Tech here in Atlanta, where I currently reside. I have a degree in policy, and policy has been one of my strong points as far as federal staffing and recruiting are concerned. Also a big systems person. So USA Staffing and Munster Government Systems or Munster Government Solutions are two systems that I specialize in. But right now, I am an SME trainer for YRCI University, and I deliver training in staffing, so federal staffing, classification, as well as delegated examining certification preparation. All right. All right, so the objectives for today, by the end of the session, you should be able to identify different retirement systems. So we're going to look at first, I'm going to tell you what these acronyms mean, CSRS, and we're going to look at some of our special groups, so some of our LEOs. Also, we're going to explore some of the different retirement options. We're going to look at immediate, deferred, and postpone. And then we're going to talk about also calculating annuity. So we won't get in the weeds of the math part of the annuity calculations, but we will at least go over it so you have an idea of what a federal annuity calculation looks like. And then we're going to identify some of the rules for FEHB, which are federal employee health benefits, as well as FEGLI, which is the life insurance, or group life insurance for federal employees, and then TSP, which is like the 401k for federal employees, and then Social Security. You see on the right side of this, of this slide, the agenda for today. So federal retirement systems overview, we're going to look at eligibility, some annuity information, pretty much it's going to be in line with the objectives. So let's go ahead and get started. And we are going to get started with a poll. It should pop up on your screen. What is your experience with retirement options or RIF planning? RIF being reduction in force, which is the federal version of a layoff. All right. So are you new to it? This is maybe something that's brand new to you. You haven't really heard a lot about it, but right now it's a pretty hot topic. You have some experience in it when it comes to retirements or RIF planning, or you're actively involved. All right. Feel free just to click on your answer and we will move forward. All right. So, federal retirement systems overview. So, there are two main federal retirement systems that cover pretty much all federal employees. We have our legacy system, which is actually the second line item, which is the civil service retirement system. It's a defined benefit system. Those employees who were covered under CSRS, which is the acronym for Civil Service Retirement, they have a larger pension, but no Social Security coverage. They did not put money into Social Security, therefore they typically do not get money out of it. There may be some exemptions there or exceptions. However, they typically just have that larger pension. The current system, FERS, which is the Federal Employee Retirement System, is considered a three-legged system, meaning it has three parts. So you have the pension, you have Social Security, which is not a part of your pension, it's a separate entity. And then you have the Thrift Savings Plan, which is TSP. So you have all three of these items that come together and create what you will receive in retirement. Now, there are some special groups that are listed in the bottom. They have different stipulations: law enforcement, firefighters, air traffic control. So these particular positions typically have a mandated retirement age. In a previous life, I was an air traffic controller. We had to retire by 55. So we could not enter the service after 30. And it was a mandated retirement because these jobs typically have a lot of wear and tear on the mind and the body. Therefore, they have mandated retirements. So their retirements look a bit different than our regular retirements that we're going to discuss today. All right, so eligibility. So there are a couple different eligibilities. We're going to just cover these three right here. So immediate, that means you meet the age and the service requirements to draw your annuity. So there are a couple different retirements that offer an immediate annuity. But once again, you have to meet age and service requirements. So you can already see how this is different from Social Security. Social Security is typically based off your age, 62, 67, 70. Of course, you have to have credits for to draw Social Security, but it looks a little bit different. Then we have a deferred option. So this is when you separate from the federal service, because for the most part, we're talking about federal retirement options here. This is when you separate from the federal service prior to being eligible for retirement. So with this option, typically you cannot claim or carry over your health benefits or your group life insurance coverage. There are some stipulations if it's postponed, which we're going to talk about. That's in this third line item here. But for the most part, deferred retirements, you're not going to be able to take those benefits over. And then postpone, you see, this particular example is for FERS, which we just talked about, the Federal Employee Retirement System. It's your minimum retirement age, which is a federal term. So MRA, we're going to see on the next slide, it's a chart that was created by OPM that determines your eligibility based off when you were actually born. So this is when MRA plus 10, so 10 years of creditable service. And this is saying that you can postpone your retirement to reduce or avoid age reduction. And you could possibly reinstate your health benefits or group life insurance when the annuity begins, depending on what you, how much service you completed prior to the retirement. So won't get into the weeds here as well, but just know there are different eligibilities that are tied to different types of retirements. All right, so first, Federal Employee Retirement System. If we look at the bullets on the left, we see that your immediate retirement options are being the age of 62 with 5 years of creditable service. Creditable service is a federal term. It's how much service can be credited towards your retirement for this particular calculation. Or you could be 60 years of age with 20 years of creditable service. You could be your minimum retirement age, which if you look at this chart on the right-hand side, this chart is also found on opm.gov. It defines if you were born in, let's say, 1967. Your minimum retirement age is 56 years and 6 months. And as you see, they do have a month breakdown as well. A lot of times we see just whole numbers or whole years for retirements, but for the MRAs for federal employees, they do break it down into months. So your MRA with 30 years, so 56, let's say 56 and 6 months with 30 years of creditable service. Then we have the MRA plus 10. Once again, that's plus 10 years of creditable service. You will have a reduction if you decide to start drawing your annuity prior at this time, because you only have the 10 years of creditable service and you're meeting your MRA, unless you postpone your retirement. And then early. So our voluntary early retirement authority has to be authorized by OPM, has to be requested by federal agencies. This is an option where you could actually retire at the age of 50 with 20 years of service, or at any age with 25 years of service. Once again, you see in the parentheses, it has to be authorized. So you could have folks on your rolls, assuming you're a part of a federal agency, that are retiring in their early 40s based off of when they entered the service and how much creditable service they have towards retirement. So some of the annuity basics. So math, I know it's all of our favorite subjects, but actually retirement math is pretty cool. So when it comes to federal employee retirement services, I'm sorry, federal employee retirement systems, your annuity is based off of your high three average pay. So you can see right here at the bullet, it says an average of the highest consecutive 36 months of basic pay. Basic pay excludes overtime and awards. So that's a caveat there. Put it in parentheses because it's very important. Just know any kind of overtime that you had while you were working, it will not be included in your basic pay. So it's not going to be a factor when you're calculating the high three average pay. So if you look in the second box here, the multiplier is telling you how to calculate the annuity. So your high 3 years of service times 1%, that's going to be your annuity. So once again, you're going to average those high three, multiply it by 1%, that's your annuity. However, if you retire at the age of 62 with 20 plus years of service, you do get a bump. You get a bump up to 1.1%. And while it may look insignificant because it's just 0.1%, it actually can make quite a difference. It could be the difference of $150 per payout or per annuity payment. I mean, it could look like a steak dinner versus a McDonald's, value meal. I'm just saying it could look like that. It seems insignificant based off the number, but it actually can be a significant payout for you. Because remember, this is going to carry you throughout your life, as well as if you have a survivor, which we'll talk a little bit about survivor benefits, they would be entitled to this payment as well. Also, you can use unused sick leave for federal employees. You can use unused sick leave to you can convert it over to service credit for retirement. So one for one. There is a cap, but you can convert that unused sick leave. You can't be paid out for sick leave. Your sick leave can remain on your profile. So if you were to leave the federal service, when you come back, that sick leave will still be there. However, if you do retire, you can convert it to service credit. All right, so not going to get too deep into this because it can get a little complicated, but just some terms that I want you to be familiar with. So, military and civilian deposits. So, military service for those employees who have served in the armed forces, they can attribute some of that time and that service towards their federal retirements. So, a couple of key terms are deposits. So that may be required. There are redeposits. Um, Also, let's see, restoring credit that you may have lost. So it's a lot of different moving parts when it comes to military and civilian deposits, but just making sure you're familiar with the terminology. We do cover military and civilian deposits as well as how to calculate them for different scenarios in a retirement course that we offer at YRCI University. So if this is something that you or your agency could use, just know we do have this already built out. And the first annuity supplement, another term to become familiar with. It's a supplement for employees who retire before the age of 62. So remember, Social Security, you can start drawing it at 62, but you're not going to get your full benefit. 67, you'll receive your full benefit. 70, you'll receive an increased benefit. If you retire before 62, which as we saw in previous slides, that is an option, there is a possibility for an annuity supplement to carry you up until that age of 62 to where you start drawing Social Security. Once again, it's only paid up until 62, and there is an earnings test that is applied to this particular supplement, so it could possibly reduce or eliminate the benefit. Now, TSP and Social Security. Remember, we talked about the federal employee retirement system being a three-legged system, it being your pension, TSP, which is the thrift savings plan, and Social Security. So the thrift savings plan looks just like a 401k. It has traditional and Roth options. It has the different funds. It also also offers options for withdrawals and loans. So it looks pretty much identical to a 401k from the private sector. Social Security, of course, we know that's governed by the Social Security Administration. You can claim it as early as 62. It's a sliding scale. If you go to ssa.gov, you can do a benefits estimate. You can manipulate some numbers and say, hey, I think I want to retire at 64. What will my payment look like if I retire at 64 versus 62 versus 70? So you can run those different scenarios to see which one works for you the best. Also, another item under Social Security, the windfall elimination provision. So not going to also get in the weeds here. We do talk about this as well in the retirement training, but it's an option for public servants who may not have put money into Social Security, which we talked about with CSRS. They did not put money into Social Security, so typically they won't draw money or benefits from Social Security, but the windfall elimination provision may help with that offset. All right, so that's something we do discuss. All right, so FEHB and FEGLI. So FEHB, Federal Employee Health Benefits, FEGLI, Federal Employee Group Life Insurance. So these are some of the carryover rules. So you have to have served in the federal government for 5 years prior to your separation date in order to carry these benefits over into retirement. Now, the federal employee health benefits, your premiums, everything stays the same, whether you're an employee or retiree. The FEGLI, the group life insurance, that does change. I would definitely make sure you do research on FEGLI, as well as talk to a retirement specialist and possibly a financial planner to see if the group life insurance is a great option for you and what you need for your family. It can be quite costly when you take it over to retirement, so there may be some alternative options that are more beneficial. And then the dental and vision elections, those are covered under Fed VIP, and those are going to be separate from your health benefits. So just knowing that, that's a separate line item. It's not the same as the FEHP. It's under Fed VIP. All right. Survivor benefits and court orders. So we talked about survivor benefits a little bit when calculating the annuities. And here's a little bit more information. So when you apply for retirement, you have to elect a survivor annuity if you have a spouse. All right. There's no way around it. If you are legally married, you have to select an option. Now, there are options where your surviving spouse would receive your full annuity. There's an option where your spouse could receive a reduced annuity. And there is actually an election where they receive nothing. All of these options have to be signed by the spouse. You can't sign for them. So, were you to expire, what does that look like? What does your surviving spouse receive? Also, know that you are paying a little bit of a premium for these different elections. Of course, if you want them to receive the full benefit, how much you pay is going to be higher. A reduced benefit is going to be lower, and no benefit is going to be zero. Also, court-ordered benefits like divorce, they can impact survivor elections. But know that beneficiaries that are identified for your thrift savings plan, remember I said that's like a 401k, or your federal employee group life insurance, those supersede the elections that you make in your retirement package. Your beneficiaries, whatever you identify, make sure that is up to date. If you leave an ex-spouse as a beneficiary on a retirement on a thrift savings plan, legally they are entitled to that. Now it may get a little ugly when it comes down to it, especially if you have a new spouse, but that's why it's super, super important for you to update those beneficiaries and check them periodically. And then our special group provisions. So our LEOs, our law enforcement officers, our firefighters, and our air traffic controllers. They have to retire. They have a mandated retirement age. They accrue their retirements faster. Like I said, these jobs, a lot of wear and tear on the body, a lot of wear and tear on the mind. So they are forced into retirement at a certain age. In some instances, they can come back as managers or consultants, but for the most part, doing the day-to-day work, they have to retire. Also, they have different rules for their supplements and their overtime inclusions. They basically just have to check the agency guidance, whatever agency they're supporting. They're going to have those rules and processes in place. But there are different retirement options for our LEOs, our firefighters, aka public servants, and then our air traffic controllers in the federal sector. All right, so the application and timeline. So these are some of the documents that you will need to process retirements. So for FERS, which is the most common retirement system right now, the SF 3107, SF being standard form, you can find this on opm.gov. For CSRS, the standard form 2801. And then also we have the military deposit forms if they're applicable to you or your situation. So these are the forms that you will pull up based off of what retirement that you are covered under. Knowing that this is transitioning to an electronic format, not every agency has fully implemented the electronic transition, but you can still look at the paper document and get an idea of what elections you may want to make. As far as time is concerned, you want to start this process at least 6 to 12 months out. I always recommend start planning for retirement the day you start working. All right. So if you have a plan and a strategy in place, it's going to always be better than waiting to the last minute to try to figure things out, because that way you can really plan and you can time everything accordingly. So we're saying begin 6 to 12 months out because you need to find your service history. You may have had breaks in service. You may have worked for multiple agencies. Do you have all of these documents in your electronic personnel files? Also, any deposits that you want to make. We talked about those civilian and military deposits. Estimates, your federal health benefits. If you can't take health benefits over with you, do you have an option for that? So making sure you time everything accordingly, as well as coordinating the last day of the pay period for your separation. So this is where that planning comes into place. Making sure those two things align, as well as having an idea of what your annual leave payout will be. We talked about you won't receive a payout for sick leave. You can use that towards retirement, but you can't receive an actual payout. Your annual leave, it can be paid out in cash. All right, and some common pitfalls to avoid. So not meeting that federal health benefits or that group life insurance 5-year carryover requirement, underfunding your thrift savings plan, also ignoring the military or civilian deposits. So interest does add up with these deposits. So this is why I say start planning for retirement as soon as you enter the federal service, and that's going to always be to your benefit. Leaving beneficiary forms outdated. You have that ex-spouse as a beneficiary, you've expired. The beneficiary designation supersedes what you elect in your retirement form. Also, assuming that VERA, which is the voluntary early retirement, or a VSIP, which is a voluntary separation incentive payment, that they will be offered. So if they're not offered, do I have other retirement options? Some resources here for you. So OPM is going to be where you go to initially. So opm.gov, you're going to find handbooks, eligibility charts, etc. For the thrift savings plan, tsp.gov, you're going to get information about withdrawal options, calculators, a lot of different information about TSP. And you still have access to this after you leave the federal service. Right now, I'm not a federal employee, but I do still have access to my TSP account so I can see what's in there, if I'm being charged fees, what's going on with my funds, et cetera, et cetera. Then SSA.gov. If you have not already created a profile for Social Security, I suggest that you do so. For the most part, everything is going to electronic. So I know back in the day, I used to receive statements from the Social Security Administration showing how many work credits I had towards retirement. Now all of that is online. Also, you can get those benefits estimates. And then your agency's HR department or benefits office, they could tell you about those deposits because they're going to be the ones to run or complete those documents for you. They can tell you about estimates and show you what forms you will need to complete certain actions. So we have come to the end. If you have any questions, if they are in the chat, we will look at those now. Also, you can connect with us. We have something new. We have this fancy QR code. All you have to do is pull your cell phone up and take a picture of it, and it will put you in direct touch with someone on the YRCI team. All right. It looks like, oh, there was one question in the chat. Do you have to serve for 5 consecutive years prior to retirement to be able to carry over the federal employee health benefits into retirement? And that is correct. Yes, you do need to serve for those 5 years. Now, there are always exceptions to every rule, but this is the standard go. All right. So if you would like to request more information from YRCI, just know from YRCIU, where I support as an SME trainer, we can train your staff on retirements. We have a full training already built out. And then we also can provide retirement related services over in another part of YRCI through our HROC. All righty. And we have one last poll. If you want to learn more about how YRCIU can support your workforce reshaping efforts, yes, please contact me, or no, not at this time. And thank you so very much for 30 minutes of your time today.